last weekend when I was refereeing, there were coach mentors or assessors that came and watched games and gave feedback to the referees. Some of the feedback was fairly simple, some of it was a little bit more complex. Some of it was definitely necessary with some of the referees, some of it was just helping to take already really good referees, make them slightly better. But as I reflect on some of the feedback that I received before games, I started to think about it from a coaching standpoint, and the referees kind of being a player, and the type of feedback that we give during competitive situations. So in my case, in one game, I got some simple feedback. Just the mentor on he wanted me to change how I was holding the flag so that the flag was in a more of a straight line when I raised it up when I was in AR. So it's a pretty simple instruction to implement in the next game. So immediately, the next time I was refereeing, I was a little bit more aware of how I was holding the flag in my hand, and so I was able to make an immediate change. It didn't take a lot of thinking. It was a very simple instruction. On the other hand, when I was a center referee, I got some other feedback in terms of changing positioning on the field. And so the next time when I was refereeing, I was then thinking about this feedback, and I probably had a bad game, and unfortunately it was kind of the later stages of a tournament. And so as I thought about that, it wasn't that the feedback was wrong or inappropriate or anything, but I do think when we're coaching players, we have to think about the environment that we're in. So is this a learning environment or is it a performance environment? So if we're coaching in the playoffs, let's say, do we want to try to get players to make major changes to their game, in a playoff situation? Probably not. That's a time where maybe, some simple instructions to make some simple changes, but getting those complex, big changes in one's game, it might not be the best time because there's, not the time to make such a change, and also, there's the possibility that a player, the learning process, you're going to get worse before you get better oftentimes. So going into a playoff situation may not be when you want your players to get worse for learning. Now, if it's an off-season game, by all means, give that instruction, try to move the player forward, to enhance their game and give them that length of time in the off-season to work on making those changes so that they're prepared for the next season. And so in my situation, this was, my next game was a semifinal at a national championship tournament. So, in some ways, I didn't have my best game, which is unfortunate for, myself, but also for the teams that were playing. And some of it, I think, is I was thinking too much on the field, trying to pay attention to what my coach had told me on the previous day. So, and obviously I see that happening with players as well. There's a lot of thinking going on when we're in a performance environment. And so we have to be cognizant of, what type of environment or what's the ultimate goal for a competition. Are we using these competitions as learning environments? Since players play, so many games these days that we're really in a full-time competitive season, we can't look at every single game as, the national championship game. So some of the games are going to be more towards a learning environment, and then other times we're going to look at it more from the performance or competitive standpoint, and winning really is the goal, especially as we get to the high school, college level. So, just a couple thoughts, think about when we're giving feedback, how we're giving feedback, what type of changes we're trying to elicit from players with that feedback, and whether or not the timing and the depth, the complexity of the feedback is appropriate for the immediate situation.